Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all. You all ready?
Yep.
Welcome to the shortest press conference you've ever had with me. Usually we go for 2 hours, hour and a half. Today we just be a few minutes. Because I didn't bring very much today. I came for one simple reason. That I expect that I would not be available to you for the next 2 weeks. So if there's anything you would like to raise with me, now is your opportunity. And we probably will be here for half an hour, I hope, because I've got to run off. So this is your opportunity. We just finished cabinet and I'm off to Tobago for the Easter weekend. And from Tobago I go out to Ireland. I'll be away from Trinidad for, I'm due back on the 14th, I think.
Yes.
So between now and then, it has now been settled and satisfied that I'm going to be, the usual arrangements are in place for acting. Mr. Imbert will be in charge, and the cabinet continues to function as a whole as we did a while ago. So if you have any questions, we can take them now, and if you don't have any, that's better. Prior, you have one, right?
Of course, more than one, Prime.
Okay, let's start with Prior then.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Prime Harry is at P News. Are you going there because of health reasons? Can you give us a little?
No. This is a straight vacation. I'm taking my wife with me, and I haven't done that for a long time.
And where are you going and how long?
I'm going to Ireland. I'll be in Ireland with a group of friends, and I'm taking my wife out. As you know, my wife has just retired after a long period of working very hard while I've been out in the political arena. So I owe her that as a part of the celebration of her retirement, and I'm having her with me for 10 days in Ireland. I'll be out in the southwest of Ireland with my wife and some friends. So that's what it is. Simple and straightforward.
Can you ask who your friends, who would be your friends that you're going with?
My normal friends, some from Barbados, some Trinidad and Tobago, and elsewhere. This is a small group of us. But I hope the weather is good, so if you really want me to have a good vacation, pray for good weather.
It's good golf in Ireland.
Huh?
Good golf in Ireland.
Yeah, but a lot of rain too. It's notorious for rain. So.
Your minister of tourism, right, was found to have an interest in a building that is rented by Pantrin Bigo. Is that any concern to you?
I'm not aware of anything out of the ordinary happening. My understanding is that there's a building somewhere where the minister has some interest, and Pantrin Bigo wanted to use the building, and they did so, knowing that the minister has an interest in the ownership. I don't know that because the minister is a part owner of a building, and if the building is what is required, and once the processes are transparent, I don't know that I have any problem with it.
But at the end of the day, he would get an income based on the rental from Pantrin Bigo. It will come to him.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, that is possible if you own a. Suppose somebody owned the bus company, and they were invited to be a candidate and they win. What would they do? Well, that's this transparency after that. He is not the one who is going out there looking to put Pantrin Bigo in his building. If Pantrin Bigo, the building is on the market, it is legitimately owned. And understand something. The minister has if he earns money from it, and if he owns it, what does the law ask for?
Yes.
Ask for a declaration to the Integrity Commission. It doesn't ask to be discriminated against because you serve the public.
But in a year in which he acquired the building, he did not report to the Integrity Commission.
I don't have those details, and therefore I can't comment on that. I don't know anything about any minister's submission to the Integrity Commission. That's a matter of law between the individual and the commission. I'm saying what the law requires in terms of earning or benefiting. If you do benefit from anything like that or own anything like that, what the law requires and what the country expects is that you will declare it, and once it is transparent, the operations. You see, there are some people who believe that once you mention P&M about somebody, they mustn't get a job. I don't subscribe to that. And you know why? Because we don't think so. There are people in this government who served in another government. One of the biggest disasters in this government, fortunately probably the only one, is by hiring somebody who was a UNC minister. But we don't discriminate against people because they have been associated with a political party. That is not how it should be. And trying to make an issue of the fact that, hey, the building that they rented, the minister have an interest in it. Well, interesting story. But what really is the problem? The minister didn't use his influence to get Punch and Big on the building, as far as I'm aware from the story that's in the public domain and from what I've seen. If the minister used his influence to get them in there, well, then you could say, well, there has been, again, that would be a breach of the Integrity in Public Life Act, because it says that you should not use your office in a particular way. So if that wasn't done, what is the problem?
Prime Minister, good day. Kimmery Fletcher, Guardian Media. Today you would have met with the families of the divers that lost their life in the Paria tragedy, as well as the lone survivor, Mr. Budram. We would have spoke to the family members when they left the White House today, and some of the words that they would have used to describe the meeting with you was they seemed to be a bit disappointed because things were left undecisive. The diver himself was saying that, it's nothing new that was said from you that he's heard before. And one of their main concerns was that they were hoping that, or questioning you rather, why the Paria board is still intact, while they still have their jobs when he doesn't have his, and stuff like that. And they felt that that was something they were hoping that could have been addressed from you, but wasn't addressed. Any thoughts on that?
You see, the disappointment could only be based on an expectation, and then that begs the question, what exactly did they expect? I try to make it very clear that we're dealing with an event, and there are processes that have to be followed. Paria is a state company, but the board doesn't own it. The board acts on behalf of the population, taxpayer. Asking for an intervention by the Prime Minister to circumvent the insurance and legitimate liability processes is not going to happen. I said so from this podium. So if they came expecting me to use the office of the Prime Minister to decree that A, B, C, D should happen, that is not going to happen, because that is not how it's supposed to happen. I was at pains to explain to them the expressions of empathy and sympathy. As I must tell you, it was quite a difficult meeting to have with people who, went through and are going through what they're going through. But what we're dealing with is not new. There was an accident in a situation. Paria carries, in fact, I've issued a statement on how a synopsis of what I said to them, and you would see what it is. The circumvention of that could have been at the top. And I told them that. When the incident happened, terrible as it is, the government's first response was, let's get some technical people in there, see what happened, and take control of it in that way. There was a big howl against that, and there was a demand for a commission of inquiry. Once you trigger that process of a commission of inquiry, all interested parties now have the potential for liabilities. And even as I speak to you now, those liabilities have not been settled. Paria is a participant, but Paria has insurance to cover any such incidents. And therefore, what they are, if what they're asking me to do is to deviate from that, disregard the processes of Paria's insurance and Paria's determined liabilities or accepted liabilities, I can't do that. So I'm afraid, you know, I'm sorry to hear that they thought it was a disappointment, but I did benefit from the conversation, I must say, because certain things were raised with us which require some kind of examination, and we will examine them because we don't have all the information. And to be, you know, and I did indicate to them that the government's position to Paria, the minister's position to Paria, is to try and be as empathetic and as swift as possible. But if everybody has lawyered up and leave the issues to lawyers to apportion liabilities, then you just have to be careful what you do. That's what it is. It's a horrible situation of loss of life, and the demand for punitive action, I did indicate to them that the processes are still on the way. We are still having to determine the conclusion of this matter. It's not concluded. So let's take it, you know, not much more than one step at a time, but there is going to be accountability, and that's what the Commission of Inquiry was about. And it's the recommendations, they spoke a lot about how things could have been better. Hindsight, of course, but we are going to be guided by the recommendations as we are guided by the insurance guidelines. So that's what it is. It's not easy to tell people that who have been through what they have been through or what they're going through. But there's no alternative that can be reasonably had. And encouraging me to do something that I don't think I have the authority to do and be acting properly, it's not going to happen.
But Prime Minister, why 2 years later for
What?
this meeting with the families?
Precisely because of what I just said. As Prime Minister, the office of Prime Minister has to be carefully used so that it is not used. I couldn't go and insert myself into that because as people sought to protect themselves and their interests, one of the best things that they could do is to hold other people. And I was clear from day one, once it became such a contentious issue, that I did not insert myself into it. They asked to see me, and I saw them relatively promptly. Right? You know, let me just give you an example. I went to open a facility. People have a business to be opened. Good business, and everything looks good, and I was invited to open it. So I went, and I took part in the opening. And somehow in the parliament, I said something in the parliament about, I think that must have been a question I answered or something like that. I'm looking at the legal shenanigan now where millions and hundreds of millions of dollars are involved. And the big point that the lawyer is making is what the Prime Minister said in the Parliament. Understand? So you could imagine if I had gone down to Paria and tried to take charge and giving instruction left, right, and center, what was going to happen? I am not to do that. That is not for me to do. And anybody who thinks that I should have done that, I'm sorry.
The widows seem to think that Paria is dragging his feet, and although you are not aware of what is happening there.
Well, I don't agree with that. I explained where the advice that I have. I explained that to them. That it is a situation where, in fact, it is what is holding up an offer of settlement from Paria's insurance to them is information, pertinent information about the employment history of the people who are the claimants, which is a normal requirement if you're going to make an insurance claim of this nature. Right? So it cannot be said to be Paria, because Paria's people want that from NMCS, and apparently the information I have is that it has not been supplied, and they told me this morning that they will work with their lawyers to make it available. So that's what it is.
And some of the information the families are saying is that you're unaware of is as far as health and safety when it comes to Paria, because they mention of an incident that happened in December where the same divers were involved. In fact, Mr. Brudram had to, according to his account, had to go out there and dive and save some people. And they are saying that, you know, Paria doesn't have these health and safety persons in place, and they slide things under the carpet. And probably if that incident wasn't wasn't hidden, then the tragedy wouldn't have happened. And they informed you of that, and they said you weren't aware of that prior incident.
Well, I mean, Paria is a big company. There's NGC, there's Paria, I can't be aware of incidents that happen all around the country. But yes, I heard about it. But that does not change the price of this one, right? And the people who are involved, there's a relationship between Paria and its contractors. There's a requirement at Paria to have safety as a paramount responsibility. I can't pontificate on that or pretend to know everything that's going on in Paria. So to raise it with me, and the minister was there. Fortunately, I had the minister with me. So the minister would look into that piece of information, which is very, very valuable. And it will give a picture of certain things, but that does not in any way recreate the environment of the accident or how the accident is being treated with as a liability of a Paria incident, tragic as it is.
After all is said and done, you know, 2 years after, do you still have confidence in the board of Paria?
Well, the board of Paria was not directly involved in this. It was not board action. I am more concerned about the failure of management and the culture that may have existed there. And as I said, we are all in a treatment process, and the process continues. It is not over.
So yes, you still have confidence in the board?
Well, for the time being, yeah. Remember, Paria board is a board of volunteers, right? It's volunteers, right? And they're not the volunteers doing public service, and you have to be reasonable, and I'm being reasonable. But that is not, you see, the demand for vengeance and punitive action, that's not where, I'm not from that direction, right? If that is where they're at, I'm not there, right? If there are actions to be taken at the level of the board and the management, well, you know, those things will flow, right? But it wouldn't be done from me, as far as I'm concerned. I am not the adjudicator for punitive actions at this time, or what should happen to the management, and so on. These are decisions that will be made as things are settled.
But given the reports that came out, and there was a suggestion of involuntary manslaughter, corporate manslaughter. Do you think that that's something that should be acted on? Like, is that something that you would like to see?
That brings into play serious legal interpretations, and everybody's going to want to defend themselves. That is not for me to adjudicate upon, right? If anybody feel that there's corporate manslaughter at play, there's a place and time to deal with that.
Switch topic?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Can I switch the topic? Is it okay?
Sure.
Yeah. You were asked two very pointed questions at the conversations with the Prime Minister yesterday on the SSA. One was flat out, is there a police or SSA hit squad? And your response to that was that there's sufficient information to convince us that some public officials who have had access to government equipment and firearms may have been involved in criminal conduct. And then we saw a story today that this hit squad may have been responsible for even more than just the one murder that's been reported. How accurate, as much as you can say, how accurate is that reporting, and how much does that really worry you?
I read the report, and I thought how easy it is to have one thing flow into another. That report spoke about a number of things. I'm not in a position to verify what is in that report. But what I can say is that serious concerns emerged in some of our security operations. Very serious investigations are underway. Very decisive actions are being taken based on the gathering of information and, I dare say, evidence as we go along. Those investigations are far from complete, and I would not want to prejudice any of them as we go along. As you know, matters of national security, one has to be particularly careful how you expose them or comment upon them or pontificate or even create expansive theories that this might be so. I must say, there's one thing I can say, because I was approached by the media when a parallel situation emerged about, was it the research and analytical, right? And it was easy. Somebody has fed to the media that there's this RAU in the police service, which is very much a parallel to the SSA, and therefore there is interception taking place by the police, which could mirror the difficulties we're having with the SSA. I want to say here, as chairman of the National Security Council, the police does not have equipment to do the interception that the SSA is supposed to do. The police relies on the SSA to do interceptions, gather information, and if criminal activity is identified and the police should be interested in what the SSA have found, the SSA shares that with the police. So the assumption that there's an SSA equivalent in the police service doing interceptions and reporting to the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security, that is not correct. That is simply an extension of a theory that anybody could make without any evidence to support it.
So you're saying this RAU unit and
research and analysis. Let me give you an example. Let me give you, the police does not have the capacity that the SSA had. Let me give you an example. And I'm going here now a little ahead of what you know. Some time ago, the police wanted that capacity because they believe it would have been useful to track criminal conduct in organized crime. The policy of this government was not to give that capacity to the police. The parliament allowed for certain interceptions to take place under the head of the police service, the head of the defense force, and the SSA. Those three departments heads could have asked for interceptions. That was a parliamentary intervention. So the police, wanting to have certain equipment, did not get that approval from the National Security Council. We found out later on that unbeknownst to the National Security Council, the Commissioner of Police went and sought to procure the equipment. The government took that very seriously, and the government instructed that the equipment be removed from the police and be placed with the SSA. That was done. I tell you this so you can understand the government's policy with respect to the police doing interception. When the police even attempted to do it by procuring without authority the equipment that could do that. And the government intervened and prevented the police from having that equipment. That is why I could tell you now that the police does not have that equipment. But I went further and I told you that the police tried to do that, and the policy was maintained by the equipment being removed from the police to the SSA. So the SSA has that equipment. The police got that by a commissioner who thought that he didn't have to follow the policy of the government on this matter.
There's a name that's been bandied about in this unit, a Corporal Brent Clement. Is that a real person? Are you aware of who this person is?
I've heard the name, and I think I know the person. I think that person was in, but whoever the name is, I'm not dealing with names. The Commissioner of Police is responsible for the police service.
This seems to be a very high-ranking unit run by a corporal. Does that worry you at all?
I don't know how the police commissioner would have settled that. As Prime Minister, I'm not involved in selecting officers for work inside the police service. The accounting officer in there is the Commissioner of Police. So whoever is there working there doing whatever, that is a matter for the Commissioner of Police. Right? But the one thing I want to make clear, that no such police unit is reporting directly to me. And I've checked, and is not reporting directly to the minister either. Such persons will be reporting under the work of the Commissioner of Police. But I want to make another point clear. The special branch provides regular reports on national security to the Prime Minister. Right? I don't pick special branch officers. I don't assign them work, but they are required to report to me so that I can know what I need to know as Prime Minister, what is happening on matters of national security as part of my job as Prime Minister. So I want you to make that fine distinction. Because the special branch is reporting to me as required since 1960, whenever, it does not mean that I am directing the police. As a matter of fact, I just receive these reports. And then based on what the reports contain, there may be questions, there may be requests for further information and so on. But the Commissioner of Police runs the police service. So because we have a problem with the SSA, I don't want you all to go off on any wild goose chase and filling up the papers with misinformation. But again, if I see accusations being made against certain departments or officers, I am not in a position to say this is not so, or it is so, because I don't have that evidence to put me in that position. That's why we're investigating.
Somebody who does report to you is the Minister of National Security, and a lot of these things happened under his watch. A lot of these hirings and this Mr. Fitzgerald Hines.
You mean the hirings where in the police service?
In the SSA and the questionable hirings. Have you brought to him? Has he had to report as to how this may have slipped under his radar?
Well, the authority to hire at the SSA was left with the director to a certain extent. And what is coming up now is that the operations and the trust that was placed, in the same way, the Commissioner of Police has SRPs. I discovered in this period of investigation, I discovered that there was an SRP, right, hired at the SSA. I didn't know that. But I mean, I'm not required to know everything, but this is one situation where, as you investigate here, an SRP was hired. That SRP was hired in, I would probably say, the normal procedure, where somebody asked for an SRP at department and the police commissioner approved it. But when that SRP becomes a problem, a security problem, then that's when the Office of the Prime Minister, National Security Council gets involved. And we got involved not a day too soon, because in the operations of the department, certain things were happening that now need to be explained.
But my question was specifically for the National Security Minister. Did this slip by him?
Well, I don't know about that, because the National Security Minister can't tell me that he knows every single thing that is going on with every single person in the police service or in the SSA. Eh? I'm National Security Council Chairman. I found out, as again, I don't know for how long it went on for, but then it came to my attention that probably half of a particular church is hired in the SSA. I didn't wake up one morning and just dream that. and it didn't come to me the first day it happened. It emerged that is so. Once we realized that this was happening, then you realize that a question is, what is this? And then you begin to ask questions, you begin to investigate, and then you begin to discern if there's a problem.
Well, Prime Minister, are you happy with the oversight of the SSA? I mean, checks and balances, because how can this happen?
How can it happen? If you hear tomorrow that I have done something very wrong, it wouldn't be the first time that the Prime Minister would have done something very wrong. And you could ask the same question. How could that happen? It is just that you put people in place, you put structures in place, and there's a requirement of trust and a requirement of monitoring and reporting. And you expect that these things, A will go to B and B goes to C and so on. It doesn't always happen like that. So as you begin to investigate, now you realize that, okay, when this was supposed to happen, that didn't happen, something else happened. But then usually there's a period of time between what should have happened and what should not have happened. Yeah?
And the problem I have is that we've seen a series of strange things happening where agencies are allowed to run on their own and do their thing. For example, we have a $2 million lawsuit with the heliport, which is an army base guarding civilians, which is, it's just anybody, you know, it is against every principle of civilian detention. We've seen the children's homes. You can Google or look at newspaper clippings from 40, 50 years ago, and there was abuse happening in these same children's homes. And yet things are just allowed to happen. And it seems to be a thread that we, as you said, that there's machinery in place and we give them trust that the machinery will run. But this is just what we're seeing now with the SSA. This seems to be the latest of things happening, you know, things being allowed to run, and where is the accountability? So,
well, if you look at the structure of the SSA, right, you would see, to be fit for purpose, it's an entity that requires a certain amount of reporting, and you put a quality of staff in there, and they work and report. I cannot guarantee you that every person that is hired into the police service for every day of their working life would be an officer who would not do anything that requires an intervention for wrongdoing. Look at the amount of police officers on a regular basis who are coming up on charges for doing A, B, C, D, F, G. So you can always ask, how can this happen? It happens because there are human failings. And it doesn't matter what structure you put in place, there are human failings. And when there are human failings, the question that needs to ask, are we in a position to know that? Because you have to have a system for you to know if what you expect to happen is not happening. And in this case, what we expected to happen was not happening, and thankfully it was discovered, and we are taking what in effect is the appropriate action, which is investigate, find the facts, because you usually get information, sometimes bits and pieces. You find the facts and you act on the facts. That's what it is. I don't know that there's another approach that we can take. I mean, let me ask you a question. I mean, the SSA is required for the country's safety, right, and security. Has to report to somebody. Somebody has to run it, right? And once the person is hired to run it, or the team is hired to run it, and the structure is there, what is the next step? Once you put it in place, you now have to rely on the people to do right by the commitments that they made as professionals to serve the country. And if they break the law, or they don't run it the way they're supposed to run it, what you need to do is to be in a position to be able to discern that and to act and correct. I don't know that there's no alternative.
How do you do that with the Pastor Brown, who seems to be the main witness, the one who's spilling all the beans, he seems to have gone into hiding. How do we go forward with that?
Well, as I said, there's an investigation taking place, and what is to happen will be governed by the success of the investigation. We are trying to find out just exactly who Pastor Brown is, how he got into the SSA, what he did there, and of course, hold people accountable for his role in there. That's what's going on.
The term Christian coup was thrown around. How close were we to an actual coup?
I don't know. We're investigating, and we're finding out what people were up to, because there's a lot that has to be unpacked to understand what went on there. I don't know Pastor Brown. I didn't know of his existence until this matter came up as a national security issue. And then when you look at, but there are some worrisome developments which I too have questions about. And the questions are what I'm expecting to be answered by the investigation. For example, I can tell you, is I don't want to be given the impression that we are depriving the public of information that the public should have. But because of what is in the public domain, you need to know that this is not a joke. This is not a joke. It's a very serious matter. And there were very serious failings in some areas. Right? I, as head of the National Security Council, I started to become very suspicious of certain activities in the last, I would say the last year and a half, 2 years. But that was just my suspicion of how could this be happening? And you want to know, what is the explanation for this? It turned out at the end of the day that we triggered this major investigation in a major department, and discovering that, what may have been fears or concerns are in fact possible to be confirmed, because what we're dealing with are failings in the state sector with respect to the fight against criminal conduct.
So you were saying that this is something that you may have triggered, not necessarily somebody brought you information.
No. I said I had my concerns along the way, right? And I don't want to explode this into any set of he say, she say. But I can tell you, as head of the National Security Council, I had to respond to a particular development. And the development was this. 2 people in police custody were killed. And the authorities and the police could only tell the state when they fell off a chair. Right? There has been an investigation into that matter so far. And to the best of my knowledge, to date, nothing has come of it. As head of the National Security Council, I inquired into that matter and was patently lied to by the Commissioner of Police. Okay? This investigation is taking place right now. At the very highest level. And a pastor appeared from some nondescript church in Arima. And of course, the police had good reason to speak to this pastor. Pastor turns up to be heavily armed with state machine guns, submachine guns that came from Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Now, these are not things that are supposed to happen. The SSA did not have authority to have armed officers until November of last year, when the cabinet approved that after a number of requests. We are discovering now that the SSA was armed, heavily armed, well before that time. These are legal problems, and there are questions to be answered as to how those arms and ammunition were being used, and to what extent any of it was engaged in criminal conduct. I will not say any more about this, and I just tell you these things so that you can understand that this is a very serious matter, which is being handled very seriously by the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
What was the first bit of evidence that led you to want to investigate?
I am not going to go into any more detail. I think I've given more detail than I should give at this point. I said earlier on, very early, the National Security Council acted at the SSA on information provided by police work. And the police is only interested in criminal conduct. Okay?
Prime Minister, you said a lot about it, and you said you don't want to speak no more about it, but I'm hearing words, we're hearing investigation. So we know we're investigating.
Sorry, it's the only word I can use. It's the only thing we can do. Investigate it.
But the thing about that is, Prime Minister, is that an investigation could go on for years. And you said an important question is to ask is, are we in a position to know this? But I think another question that's important to ask is, how are we going to ensure that this does not happen again? And accountability, it seems that you are taking accountability when it comes to, you said, something concerned you 2 years now, you looked into it. You made mention of the Commissioner of Police lying to you, etc. But when is the Minister of National Security, whose all of these things are under his watch, is going to be held accountable? Because we're not just talking about this
Hello.
SSA.
I am telling you about the National Security Council, and you tell me about the minister. You can target him. You can target the minister if you wish. The minister reports to me. The minister works with me. I don't have another minister in Tobago. I don't have one in Grenada. Everything I tell you here, the Minister of National Security is involved in it. I don't go to the Minister of Energy or the Minister of Health for that. I deal with these through the Minister of National Security. Right? This is a national security matter. And there's a Minister of National Security. And I don't have any concern that he doesn't have. And I'm not dealing with anything that he's not dealing with. So,
how are you so confident in this Minister of National Security when we have people held in police custody, said they fall off a chair, they died, investigation. We're seeing things happening for so long. Now we're hearing about a pastor
so
with
long.
God.
You think it's long?
We're hearing things
You think it is so long?
An investigation for 2 years, I think that is long.
Well,
Why it seems like the Minister of National Security
and
has the Prime Minister's favor.
You could say whatever you want, right? If you were in the job, I would tell you the same thing. And I'm not going to be led down any part by you talking about the minister. I have 22 ministers working with me. And as I said before, when I do not think that they're useful in the position that they are, I will take action. So you and the minister, this obsession you have with the Minister of National Security, I could tell you, nothing that I've told you here is outside of the remit or the involvement of the Minister of National Security.
Commissioner of Police, do they form part of this investigation? Do they have questions to answer in this investigation?
Who do you think the police work for? The commissioner. So when you can ask me, how you can ask me that?
No, I'm asking, is the commissioner...
If the commissioner herself is doing the investigation, if the commissioner herself is going and doing the investigation, by whom? By whom?
The new head of the S.
And what
that's
for?
Exactly who now falls
And what for?
Well, that's a good question. So
why? Hold, let me understand your question. What would cause you to think that the commissioner of police should be investigated?
If she hired somebody, if the commissioner of police
Where you gonna
would
from?
have allowed,
Like whom?
but you said the SSA reports directly to the commissioner, right? Or the SRP.
I didn't say that. The SSA is an entity under law. It's a separate entity. For example,
You had mentioned, right?
as I'm saying, we are discovering that now, that there's an investigation taking place. And among the discovery of the investigation is this anomaly, right? And I just told you that so you could understand what we're dealing with. So I don't know that this calls for and it's not, this is the Commissioner of Police who is here now. This didn't happen during her tenure. So the investigation will determine who did what, where, when, and how. That's why you have an investigation, and that's why it is taking long. You cannot. The worst thing that could happen now is to try to take action to satisfy yourself that you know when you don't know. Investigations are required so that you would know exactly what are the facts, right? And usually, in situations like these where things are hidden or could be hidden, it takes a fair amount of cross correlations to determine what you're dealing with, because nobody's is coming up and saying, okay, well, I've been doing this wrong, I've been doing that wrong. It has to be discerned by investigative processes and looking at facts. One of the things you would have heard in the very first statement I made is that we have taken action to bring about comprehensive audit of the infrastructure, the personnel, and the processes in the SSA. That will take a little time, but as we get information which requires action, we take those actions.
Prime Minister, you seem to be making a reference to the former Commissioner of Police, right? And what's happening in SSA now. Is there a link between
Which one? We have a lot of former commissioners of police.
Mr. Griffith and what's happening in SSA now?
Well, some of it is linked to his tenure, and others are not. I mean, the investigation will, at the end of the day, as I said, we will determine who did what, when, where, and how.
So, is he also being investigated in this matter, SSA?
I did not say that. We have comprehensive investigations taking place, including homicide investigations, which I have no role in. Right? But there are issues which are overlapping. So don't try to put any words in my mouth. I did not say this one or that one is being investigated. When I say previous commissioners, it will be determined who did what. Right? I saw one of the commissioners saying, "Well, I am the one who created." Okay, fine. There is an investigation. At the end of it, a lot of information will be available, and the government will be as open and transparent as is pertinent and prudent, and what's the correct word? As is required. Well, I am not the one that talks about arrest. Arrest will be determined depending on where criminal conduct is found. If criminal conduct is found, then that's a matter for the police. Right? I don't lead that.
You said the equipment to Industrial Communications was taken away from the TTPS, right, given to the SSA. Should, given what is happening now with the SSA, should, the population be a bit concerned that they have that equipment?
No, the SSA is under proper control at this point in time. The processes and the SSA's operations are under proper control. As a matter of fact, Brigadier Spencer is as good an officer as you could get in any part of the citizenry to do the job.
How many people are employed with the SSA right now?
I couldn't say offhand. It's a couple of, it's a significant number. I couldn't say the exact number.
Is he doing this investigation completely solo?
No. He is working alongside the police, because it's really a significant police investigation, because what we're dealing with is really a police investigation, and the SSA is cooperating with it.
You noticed that investigation when you returned from America, had meetings with the CIA, FBI. Are they concerned? In other words, were they involved in causing this investigation to be started?
I would not be speaking to you about that if they were, and I just want to say that we have a lot of cooperative arrangements with a number of countries, what we call our national security partners, both from a point of view of training and operations, and therefore I will not be discussing those matters with you in this way.
So would you say that these investigations could take you outside of Trinidad and Tobago? In other words, is it within Trinidad, or could it be far-reaching outside our borders?
Not me. I'm not investigating anything. It is being investigated. I am not investigating anything. The police will follow the evidence wherever it is.
Yes, but is it terms of reference then, or of that investigation?
The terms of reference are the powers. The terms of reference remain their powers under the Police Service Act. There's no other. There's nothing new about that. They're investigating a matter, and they will follow the evidence and draw conclusions. And if they find matters of concern, they report them, and if they find criminal conduct, they act as they are authorized to do. So there's nothing peculiar about it, except that there's a failure that we did not anticipate, and we are taking the investigative action. Okay? Is there anything else outside of that? Because I'm running off.
There's a by-election coming up. Lengo.
Oh
Excited?
yeah.
Tell me about that.
The tide seat in Lengwa, there's a requirement for a by-election, and the election would be called sometime in not too distant future. Again, there's no need to upset ourselves over that. We've had elections all the time. There'll be a by-election down there sometime. I think there's more than one. There's another one somewhere. Somebody had died somewhere.
Yeah.
I think there's so more than likely that both of them would be held at the same time.
Prime Minister, in the one with Langwa and Young Work, right? The issue was there was a spoiled ballot because the returning officer
that matter was just ended in the court. I have no appetite for it.
No, Prime Minister, there was no redress because the returning officer didn't initial the ballot. Is there something in terms of election?
Prior, all of that has just been adjudicated in the court. As Prime Minister, I have no role in that. As a matter between the EBC and the court. The EBC was taken to the court. The court looked at all that you will raise there. So why are you asking me to get involved in that? I have no role in it, so I'm not going to discuss it.
Maybe in that process, where an officer cannot be held accountable for not properly signing a ballot.
I have no role in that.
Any update on the 100 million for the Defence Force to assist with programs in socially marginalized communities?
I just came out of a meeting where that is being worked upon as to how we will function to make use of that arrangement in the communities. There's a group of ministers who are working to see how best. So hopefully we are aiming to be able to roll out some of the activities and put a structure in place to deal with it by the end of April. So it is being looked at. We're not just throwing things out and as was thought. We're thinking it through and trying to make it an effective interventionist arrangement.
The public confidence in the security services with these different things, with the SSA and this, I can't remember the name, it was the AR unit or RA unit, the latest thing on the... Right. The general, are you confident? Because remember you had told, last week you had told the general public to cooperate if you see something, if you know anything, cooperate with the police and so on. Are you confident that the security service retain the public confidence at all, or has it been dented by these?
No. Let's put it this way. I'm disappointed at what is emerging from the SSA. But I'm also very heartened by the work that was done by the police. Okay?
Enjoy your trip.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you all back in a few days. Wish me well, right? And you, if you know anything that I should know about the minister, let me know, right? Thank you all very much.
$50 by 20, $50 by 25.